Aloha, inspired moneymakers. Welcome back. Welcome to Inspired Money, where we talk about everything from mastering your money mindset to investments and more. I'm your host, Andy Wang, financial advisor at Runnymede Capital Management, and I'm so glad that you're here with us. The topic for this episode is the art of mindful spending, finding joy in financial decisions. I guess we're going to find out if spending really is an art. This much I know. Spending can be fun. Spending can also be regrettable. As a financial advisor and planner, I often see spending as needs, wants, and desires. But the truth is that it's not really that simple, is it? Money is frequently cited as the number one stressor weighing on US adults, survey after survey. Often people give a specific reason of insufficient emergency savings. So spending is an important variable. Before we bring in our guests, I just want to give a shout out to Robin Sharma, who we had on a live stream on Tuesday. If you haven't watched or listened to that episode, please check that out. And it was a lot of fun. We talked about his book, Wealth That Money Can't Buy. Money that, now I got it all messed up. This is what happens when you don't practice. And it's a live stream. So that we keep things real. Let's bring in our panelists to rescue me. So welcome, everybody. So good to see all of you. Let me start with Grant Sabatier. He's a leading voice in the FIRE movement, renowned for achieving financial independence, which he wrote about in his best-selling book, Financial Freedom, A Proven Path to All the Money You Will Ever Need. He founded the influential blog Millennial Money and has engaged in multiple ventures, including podcasts like Financial Freedom and Millennial Money Minutes, which discuss personal finance and entrepreneurial success. Welcome back, Grant. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Glad to be back.
We have Amanda Clayman. She's an internationally renowned financial therapist who helps people bring life and money into balance. She's the host of the Audible original podcast, Emotional Investment, and the author of several courses for LinkedIn Learning. Amanda, it's so good to see you.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
And we have Andy Hill, founder of Marriage, Kids, and Money. He transformed his financial situation from being in debt to millionaire status within a decade. He uses his platform to promote financial independence for families. In my view, Andy seems to be everywhere. He has an award-winning podcast, YouTube channel, Instagram, TikTok, newsletter, all aimed at helping families achieve financial goals and foster generational wealth. Andy, welcome back to Inspired Money.
Thank you very much for having me, Andy. It's been a while. I'm glad to be here.
He's like the happiest guy also that I've ever seen. And I've been to conferences before, and Andy's like the mayor. Like every single person walking by, they're like, Andy. And I think they're talking to me. I'm like, darn it, they're not talking to me. They're talking to Andy Hill.
It's a bummer when you got the same name, you know? What are you going to
do? It's all good. I think Kate Horrell will be coming in. If not, then I'll do her intro when she arrives. And if not, then we'll have a party -1. But let's jump straight into segment 1.
Embrace values-based spending to align financial habits with personal values and goals, fostering financial well-being and satisfaction. Begin with self-reflection to understand your core values, identifying what truly brings joy and fulfillment. Align spending with long-term goals, resisting impulse buys and societal pressures, focusing instead on what matters most to you. Adopt conscious decision-making for financial choice, evaluating its alignment with your values and needs. Cultivate gratitude for what you have, reducing unnecessary spending and fostering contentment. Implement values-based spending by crafting a budget prioritizing expenses that reflect your personal values while minimizing lesser ones. Utilize budgeting tools for consistent tracking, ensuring alignment with your life's goals. Save intentionally, directing funds towards ethical investments or causes resonating with your values. Before purchasing, pause and reflect on the item's contribution to your long-term happiness. By integrating these practices, transition your financial activities into sources of joy and purpose, leading to a more intentional, fulfilling life.
Amanda, intellectually, we know what we need to do, spend less than what we make. But money decisions are often based on feeling. What stands between us and finding joy in making financial decisions?
Well, one thing I think we should keep in mind here is that money is extremely dysregulating emotionally into our physiological state. A lot of us carry a lot of, um, money takes us to some vulnerable places in our lives, right? A lot of shoulds. So often there is a internal dialogue that's coming from a place of responding to danger or feeling defensive, feeling under threat. We're scared, and that's a physiological state of arousal. That means that we are in fight or flight mode, and when we're in fight or flight mode, it's really hard for us to be able to kind of reflect on some of those, like in the packet it was talking about, like reflecting on our core values, for example. Like when we're feeling like we are under threat, we are not in a place where we are in touch with our core values. So I would say that one of the first things that we need to do is pay attention to our arousal state, to get present in our bodies, to really try to even work kind of somatically, to take some deep breaths or whatever it takes to bring down that state of arousal. And that's when we are in a position to exercise some of those, to follow our higher angels, if you will, in those moments.
I like that. Follow our higher angels. Andy, like many married couples, you and your wife, Nicole, sometimes have different ideas of money. How do you bring your visions together to work toward common goals?
Yeah, I would say for us personally, and for the couples that I've had the chance to talk to, it comes with just actually making the time for that connection, making time for communication. And I think a lot of us, especially when we get married, maybe we have some kids, we got some busy jobs, we got all these things happening. We don't slow down and take the time to connect with our spouse and make that opportunity for collaboration. Yeah, maybe we won't have the same view on everything, but there's probably a reason we got together with that person in the first place, maybe to compliment us on some of those things we didn't like about ourselves. So maybe we can learn from them by sitting down, truly empathizing, listening, and trying to understand their point of view. And a lot can come from just making the time for those conversations.
Grant, I've heard you say that people should stop budgeting and, rather than budgeting, focus on what has the biggest impact on your savings. What might that look like?
Yeah, I don't say that budgeting doesn't work for everybody, but I tend to think that it makes people focus on kind of the number side of money first, when really you should be thinking about what kind of life do you want to live and how can money help you live that life. And I often tend to see, even in my own relationship, you get down to the dollars and the cents discussion, and that's where you kind of get stuck when and instead, talking about life and where you want to be and what you want the money to help you do ultimately is much more inspiring and much more fulfilling. And then figuring out how to use the money that you have and the money that you could make to live that life, as opposed to the other way around. So I don't think that budgeting is necessarily bad. It just tends to be the first place the money conversations start, when it really misses the larger point that money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
How do you think the FIRE movement and value-based spending intersect? Can one enhance the other?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most exciting things about the FIRE movement, just seeing it evolve and spread and become so much bigger than I think any of us could have ever imagined, is that it's really become a choose your own adventure, where there's no sort of default sort of picture of someone pursuing financial independence. And that's been, I think, the most beautiful thing, because we all have different dreams, we all have different goals. And I think most importantly, the FIRE movement now is less focused on acquiring a large amount of money, like I did, that can last you for the rest of your life, and much more focused on how do I save for future freedom, but use the freedom that I have today. And so, that's been really cool to see, just because it's a much more sort of present, mindful focus. And to your question around values, I think we're always changing and evolving. And oftentimes, as Andy mentioned, we all move so fast in our life that we often just don't take the time and the space that money has afforded to us to really reflect on who we are and whether we're willing to keep making the trade-off that we've been making for money. And so the nice thing is that money does give you the space and the freedom, if you do take advantage of it, to figure out what you really want. And oftentimes what you want or wanted, a few years ago might have changed. And, just being present to that, is a really empowering space to be.
I like that. Let's go to segment 2.
Integrate mindfulness into your financial planning to achieve the Zen of budgeting. Begin by instituting regular financial reviews, creating space to observe and adapt your spending habits into alignment with your goals and values. This nurtures a mindful connection with your money, steering you away from impulse purchases toward more meaningful expenditures. Pause and reflect before each purchase to ensure it aligns with your long-term objectives, promoting intentional spending. Cultivate gratitude for your current possessions, which can diminish the desire for unnecessary items and foster financial contentment. Employ budgeting apps or journals to diligently track your finances, providing a transparent overview that aids in making informed decisions. Visualize achieving your financial goals and stay motivated and connected to your budgeting journey. Incorporate stress-reducing techniques like meditation to manage financial anxiety, helping prevent rash decisions. Embracing these practices can transform your approach to money management, leading to a more aware, purposeful, and satisfying financial life.
Amanda, I read about a time when you had debt and your mom helped you with a budget. It seems like oftentimes people are intimidated by the idea of creating a budget, but your mom was able to simplify that process for you. Can you share what that was like?
Yes, this is hearkening back to a time in my 20s when, I had everything on my mind except for what to do with my money. I only wanted to avoid it. For me, I was so sensitive to the constraint aspect of the limitation. And I was very rebellious against that sense of constraint. And it really showed up in my money. So I was highly avoidant. I did not open bills on time. Things were late. Things were a real mess. And one of the things but then I was in this boom bust cycle where like suddenly something would happen. Like I'd be very worried about a particular bill or debt. And I would send all of the money that I had toward that debt, only to leave myself with not enough then to cover the other aspects of my life. And of course, I was very ashamed of this. I did not want to tell anybody, let alone my mother, about this, but it kind of all came tumbling out in this very dramatic experience where she gave me a haircut and it was awful. And I had to admit that I couldn't go back to my hairdresser because I had bounced a check there. So kind of like my house of secrets, my house of cards came tumbling down. And what my mom showed me in setting up this initial plan for my money, which I then took and ran with, was the idea that I could budget for my needs, that a budget was not an instrument of punishment. It was not just a tool of no, that in fact, the healthier way to approach budgeting is to think of it as a tool of yes. What is it that I want to say yes to with my money? And that included budgeting enough money for myself so that I could get out of this boom and bust cycle, so that I could feel like I had the power to really direct money toward the things that were important to me, to treat my needs as important, which was a lesson that I really needed to learn, and money helped me learn. And that really was, I would say that healthy budgeting exercise, and also kind of coming clean and having some support and being more honest, and not so shut down with shame. All of those lessons happened at the same time for me around managing cash flow. And that was the thing that really started me on this financial wellness journey, was really confronting a lot of those limiting misconceptions about what a budget can be. Oops, Andy's muted.
You got your mute, Andy.
I hate it when I do that. What I was saying is that I love that realizing the power of the budget actually setting you free rather than being something that's limiting or restrictive. That's really powerful. I just want to take a moment to introduce our panelists who just joined. My friend Kate Horrell, who I haven't seen also in ages. Kate is, let's see, Kate is an accredited financial counselor, chartered financial consultant, and founder of King's High Media. She helps military families to maximize their pay and benefits. Her blog, resources, and products provide personal finance education tailored to the unique needs of active service members, veterans, and their families. Kate, I'm sorry that maybe my emails ended up in spam, but I'm glad that you're here. Welcome to Inspired Money.
Thanks for letting me join, even though I'm late.
Better late than never. So I'm going to give you just a chance to get acclimated. And I want to ask Grant, the FIRE movement often advocates pretty aggressive saving strategies. How important is mindfulness and how can it be implemented?
I think one of the nice things about the FIRE movement is this sort of focus on, spending more time with your money. I think that's what it comes down to. And so however you do that, when you're focusing on things like increasing your net worth and trying to make more money and invest your money, naturally you build a more intimate relationship with money. And then through that relationship, it's just like an old friend where you start to get comfortable with it. You start to see things in that person that you didn't see before. And I think so much of this comes down to really starting to trust your intuition more than your mind. I think oftentimes when we start with money, we're just really analytical. We're trying to put everything in its place. We're trying to look for all of these connections. But when you start to trust your intuition more, you don't have to think as hard about, do I want to spend money on this? Do I want to spend money on that? You sort of know what you want and what you need and who you are. And that can take time. It's just, even like building a meditation practice, at first when you sit down, your mind is all over the place and it's so hard to let go of your thoughts. And the same thing with money. It's very, very difficult when you just come to it and you're thinking about it all the time. And you spend so much of your brain power thinking about it. But the nice thing that happens is as you do save more money and have more money in the bank, you start reclaiming some of that part of your brain. And then you can think about other things and focus on other things. So the nicest thing for me, I think, when I started my financial independence journey and I was super stressed out, about 80% of my waking hours, I was thinking about money. Once I reached financial independence, now probably less than 5% of my time I spend thinking about money. And that's just so much more time to do other things and to, expand into your life and grow in different ways when you don't have that focus.
That's definitely a sign that you're doing things right. Do you think you can trust your intuition at the outset, or do you really need to do research and learn about like good personal finance best practices before you can actually trust your instinct?
Yeah, I think deep down from the beginning, we all know what we need. And it's really about taking the time to focus on that. Oftentimes, money, it's our interface with the external world. And so it's a way for us to buy something from the outside. It's a way for us to buy things to have some external experience. But I think from the beginning, most people know what they need. And I think there's a lot of people out there that feel stuck in their lives or they feel stressed about money. And that's really the starting point. If you feel stuck, it's because you are. If you're unhappy at your job, that's your intuition telling you that it's not right and that you perhaps need to make a change. So I think people should trust their intuition much, much earlier on. And it just gets stronger. You sort of, it's like having any form of self-confidence. When you take a risk or you do something different, and then you get more joy on the other side, you feel a little more confident in your intuition and that it led you in the right place. But I think deep down, most of us really know what we need and know what we should be doing. And even when we don't, when we're hiding from money or chasing money, it often is just a mask for something else that we need in our life, because we're so conditioned to just chase money as the next thing. And so, the more time that you spend with it, the more you realize kind of how much of an illusion it is, how much power it has on other people in the world. And the more that you're able to let go of that and the more experience you have with that, the easier it becomes. Money becomes something that's quite easy to get, and something that's quite easy to manage and maintain. But it takes some time to get there, and you have to learn how to certainly not let it be the driving force in your life.
Thank you, Andy. In your journey from debt to wealth, how important was the role of reflecting before spending?
Very, very, very important for both my wife and I. I think that in the beginning of our relationship, we were very happy to be earning anything and then combining our money together and then just enjoying life. And that's what money can be used as a tool to enjoy life. And that's fantastic. It wasn't until we learned that we were going to be parents that something sort of flipped in our brain that said, okay, we're not just responsible for our own joy and happiness today. We're responsible for our financial future as well as the financial future of our daughter that's coming into the world. And for me, that became like my driving point to say, okay, how can we use most of our money for fun and the stuff that we want to use, but some of it for these bigger goals that we have as a couple, these bigger goals that we have for our daughter in the future. And with that North Star, as Grant's talking about, those things that are most important to you, we allocated our money accordingly to make that transition. Now, was that easy to go from spending everything you have on fun to moving towards an area where you're saving some for the things that you need in the future? No, it wasn't easy, but with time, it became easy. So I think a lot of us get excited about going from 0% savings rate to a 50% savings rate like that. And it's like, that's pretty impossible. You have to kind of gradually move your body in that phase and to get used to it and get used to becoming a spender, get used to becoming a saver, get used to becoming somebody who gives a little bit more. And then over time, it becomes easier.
That's a pivotal moment, having a child, for a lot of people, right? That's like the wake-up call. I need to be an adult now. I need to make wise choices and plan for the future. What kind of changes did you have to make to your budget? Like, what did it look like once it goes from not being all going towards fun?
Yeah, I think a big part of it, we were lucky that, when my wife and I got together, I was making, call it like $60,000, something like that. And then when I got married, I married a woman who was making pretty much the same thing. So we doubled our income and then we moved in together. We shared food. We shared all those things. So it just became a cash explosion for us because we were used to living on less. And so for us, it was just spending and having fun. And so when we had that idea, we said, okay, what can we do? Let's pare down some of the obvious things. You're pregnant, so we're not going out as much. we're pulling back on the partying and the restaurants and things like that. That could be a little easy transition. But some of the other things that were a little more difficult, we're saying no. Saying no became very, very difficult for us because we had said yes to so many things before with friends and families and vacations and things like that. So saying no became a difficult thing for not only us, but then also for the people we were saying no to. But we knew when we were saying no to that situation, we were saying yes to a brighter future for our relationship and a brighter future for our daughter.
Kate, what unique financial challenges do military families face? Oh, I think she's muted. You're muted.
Great question. Just like every other family on the planet, right? We have some unique challenges and we have some unique opportunities. The challenges for many military families are the military spouse underemployment rate and unemployment rate is crazy high relative to the civilian population. The statistics don't necessarily break down details as well as I would like them to, but it is quite obvious that the effects of moving every 1 to 3 years are going to impact somebody's educational or professional, career development. And then when you factor in the fact that often the spouse is solo parenting a huge amount of time, that also impacts sometimes their financial opportunities. And then just the sheer cost of moving every few years. Even though military families do have pretty generous allowance system that should, in theory, cover all those costs, that doesn't always work out exactly that way. So yeah, we have some unique challenges, but we also have a little bit more job security in some cases. And the military pay structure gives you pretty regular increases in pay that are predictable, which is super great for things like ramping up those savings rates.
That's great. Thank you for the background and context for those of us who are not in the military. Let's move on to the next segment.
Transitioning to sustainable and ethical spending is about making choices that benefit the planet and society. Prioritize purchasing essential items that adhere to environmental and social standards, ensuring your money supports positive global impacts. Conduct research on products and brands to verify their commitment to sustainability and ethical practices. Supporting companies that are transparent about their labor conditions and environmental footprints can contribute to a market that values more than just profit. Adapt your lifestyle to reduce waste. Choose products with minimal packaging, buy durable goods, and recycle. Establish your personal ethical and sustainability criteria. Dedicate a segment of your budget to support products and initiatives that align with these values. Regularly educate yourself on eco-friendly and fair trade practices to enhance your consumption decisions. By reflecting on and adjusting your spending habits, you champion a lifestyle that upholds your values, promoting a healthier, more equitable, and sustainable world.
Grant, when you're retired, it's important to calculate how much money you need to live on. You've pointed to an increasing uncertainty around the impact of climate change and its potential to, I guess, hinder the growth of investments. How do you think about environment, sustainability, and governance?
Yeah, this is one topic I don't think is talked about enough. I think we all expect that we're going to continue to invest in our total stock market index funds and get 5 to 7% inflation adjusted, dividend adjusted returns forever. And I don't think that we can suppose that we're going to be in this forever growth economy scenario. And so it really just leans back to being more conservative with your calculations. Oftentimes when you run any sort of simulation, the first 5 years of your retirement life are obviously going to be the most important. And thankfully now more people are recognizing the healthy value of continuing to work in some way. And so I think the byproduct of what's happening culturally is that people will continue to save and invest, and they'll also continue to work in careers that they're passionate about, for longer periods of time, really to de-risk their life. But I think we're really underestimating the impact that climate's going to have specifically on where we live and our housing cost. And so, some of the fastest growing markets in the US and like the world's largest subdivision, I think recently opened, and sold out outside of Phoenix. And, I really think places like Arizona, will be, largely, uninhabitable in 20 to 25 years. New Orleans, Houston, these places with, on floodplains, the reason why insurers are backing out of these locations and the insurers won't cover places in Florida and California and the wildfires are because they understand that it's catastrophic risk. And so anywhere that you have a hard time getting any type of insurance, you probably shouldn't live for the long period because you're going to lose your house, or you could lose your house and not be able to recover that investment. So I think there's going to be a large sort of climate migration happening. You're already seeing that with the growth of places like Duluth, Minnesota, and around the Great Lakes region, these places with water that are less susceptible to natural disasters. But even where I spend most of my time in Columbus, Ohio, we're getting more tornado warnings and more wetness issues, and it's impacting people's basements. And I think people are really underestimating and not calculating in the climate risk into their future retirement planning.
Things are changing. Amanda, how does making ethical spending choices affect a person's psychological well-being and maybe their sense of purpose?
We take in so much information from our culture and the ways that we're socialized by our parents around, like, what does it mean to be a good person? What does it mean to be an ethical person? And all of us, I would say, it's kind of tough to have just an independent sense of one's inherent goodness, because we do look at our culture for reference. So I think we do ourselves a favor when we are able to reflect on some of our own expectations about what it means to live that ethical lifestyle. But in a sense, we do kind of measure ourselves against a standard. And I'm not saying that should be an unconscious kind of an experience where we take an unchecked view of some of those messages and standards that we've internalized. But at the end of the day, we do have to be proud of ourselves, right? And that means that when we are making behavioral choices, for example, that are in alignment with what we believe is good, what we believe is good for ourselves, for others, for the planet, et cetera, that's a significant source of self-esteem. And that is something that it behooves us to organize around on a fundamental level.
Kate, you mentioned that military families are often traveling. There's a global nature to military operations. How can service members make ethical spending choices, especially while stationed abroad? You're muted.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh, we lost her.
She hit the other button.
Yeah, she hit the wrong button. So we'll go to Andy. Andy, what are practical ways that families can integrate sustainability into their everyday spending?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is going back to those conversations around values. So if we are using money as a tool to represent the things that we care about and the values that we have, we can do that the same way with our conversations around, ethical spending, as well as the things that we care about with regard to our planet and where we're going in the future. So you mentioned it well in the segment in between, are we purchasing from companies that we feel proud to purchase from, and analyzing our spending accordingly. We spend a lot as families. We have multiple people that are with us in our house. How are we utilizing that money to best serve our children's future? Are we giving them a planet to live on? Are we supporting companies that uphold those same types of values? And are we showing our kids along the way too, having those conversations, maybe whether in the grocery store or buying something on Amazon over and over again, having the conversations about what that means for the small business future, as well as other things. So I think having those open conversations with your kids is really important, whatever your values are, and communicating those accordingly.
Great lessons. Kate, you're back.
I'm back. You're asking about the impact, the way that we are impacted by moving around. I think one of the very cool things, but also challenging things, is we do have the opportunity to see different environments and to work in different places that may treat the environment differently. So we definitely get a broad perspective that we might not get otherwise. But on the flip side, there is just some inherent waste in our lifestyle. There's no doubt about it, right? I'm not moving my toilet brush to a new house. I'm not going to do it. And toilet brushes are very frequently made out of plastic. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. One of the things that's been really useful to me, though, is to focus on, while trying to be aware, not getting hyper caught up in beating myself up in some quest of perfection. Because in all aspects of our finances, not just things that are environmental issues, you can't be perfect. And I think it can be a little sabotaging if that's your goal.
Yeah, we have to be kind to ourselves and allow ourselves just to do our best, because doing our best is oftentimes enough, and you're just moving in the right direction. Yeah, in my household, my wife really drives the environmental mission. And it started by, whenever we get takeout containers from the restaurant, we would wash them and bring them back. So when we do takeout, we would use the same containers again. Now she's moved on to the next level. She bought these stainless steel containers so that we can reuse them. And then last night we ordered out, and the restaurant knows that we have a desire to bring these containers, and they'll oblige us and reuse them. And actually, the restaurant owner is so happy because it's actually saving the owner some cost. With that, let's go to segment 4.
Embrace mindful spending by integrating effective tools and techniques into your financial life. Use budgeting apps like Quick and Simplify or YNAB to oversee your expenses, ensuring they align with your financial goals and personal values. Track your spending with applications like Tiller, Spendy, or Wally, providing clarity on where your money goes and identifying areas for improvement. Consider maintaining a mindful money journal to reflect on the emotions driving your spending decisions. Engage with automated savings tools like Opportune and Acorns to enhance your savings without daily effort. Implement the 24-hour rule for non-essential buys and foster more deliberate spending. Cultivate gratitude for existing possessions to diminish the desire for unnecessary spending. Regularly review your spending habits and financial decisions, celebrating mindful spending victories, and pinpointing opportunities for growth. Adopting these strategies paves the way to a financially conscious lifestyle marked by enhanced well-being and intentional living.
Grant, for 5 years, you saved about 80% of your income. What tools and techniques did that require?
Yeah, so I was early Mint user and then early Personal Capital, now Empower user. I think I wouldn't have been able to do what I did without a personal net worth tracker, and just being able to use my phone and log in every morning and do what I called my money meditation, which was just while I was drinking my coffee, I looked at what hit my credit card, what hit my bank account, what I'd spent my money on. I thought about how I was spending my money. And most importantly, I was seeing my net worth grow because I was tracking my investments. And that was really just hugely motivating for me just to see the number going up, because when I started, I was negative $21,000. And then once I got to zero, it felt great. But once the money started growing and compounding, it was like my little dopamine hit, every morning when I looked at it. And even when it was down, just zooming out a little bit to see, the trend lines was super, super important. I think that was probably the biggest thing. And technology really enabled me to be able to do that. Now there are just so many other tools that you can use, to support you on your financial journey. And also investing has gotten a lot easier too. Which has been nice. I mean, of course, you have all the Robinhood kind of criticism and the gamification of investing, but just being able to run your entire financial life and your business for that matter, on your phone, I think is just been a huge game changer.
For sure. I mean, now it's like $0 commissions and fractional shares, so you don't have to have a large dollar amount that you need to start to invest. Kate, any advice on automated savings tools? I would guess that applies to military families. I mean, when you're frequently experiencing either changes in income or location, the more you can automate, the better.
Absolutely. For us, one of our great big wealth building tools was automatic contributions to retirement accounts. Like I talked about those regular pay raises. I always encourage my clients and my friends, every time you get a pay raise, increase your contributions to your retirement accounts by 1 or 2%. Typically, you're still bringing home more money. You just don't realize how much more because a little bit of it is going to another purpose. I also, for our constituent group, I'm a big fan of automating things like at least have all your credit cards set up to make a minimum payment. Even if you pay them in full every month, which obviously is what the goal is, set them up to do a minimum payment so that if you have an emergency or you get called out in the field or there's something comes up, you're not going to take a hit to your credit because you didn't make that credit card payment on time. So I use automation as many ways as possible, and it's worked for us and lots of other people.
It's nice when you don't have to think and you're doing the right things automatically. Amanda, what strategies do you suggest for somebody struggling to align their spending with their emotional and financial goals?
I want to go back to something that Andy said in the beginning, which is that so much of this is remedied by simply giving it our time and attention. I'm not the best person maybe in the world of financial tools and apps, because I will joke that the best app for your money is your calendar. app. When we spend time paying attention to what our goals are, sort of tracking the complexity of our financial life, that's really when we have the opportunity to do the kind of integrative work of identifying those things that are kind of predictable expenses or choices that we commit to, and then we can sort of automate and those just move forward, and partializing out the things that do need our attention, that do need our kind of like sensitive, more nuanced discernment in order to figure out what the right course of action is for ourselves. And that isn't something that we do on the fly, and it's not something that an algorithm can necessarily solve for us.
So if you're using your calendar, is it simply setting a date to review your accounts or to have a discussion with your spouse?
I mean, all of those things happen in that space and time. And that's the funniest thing, is I think we oftentimes kind of start with an awareness of the tasks and the things that we need to get to. I recommend that people start with an idea of a container, like a container in space and time that's going to be your money time. You know, Grant mentioned that he spends like a significantly small portion of his time and attention on money now. And that's because as we do this consistently, kind of the things that we need to pay attention to can shift and can have their moment in the sun in this scheduled time. We can shift our focus, but we don't need to sort of reinvent the wheel every time of finding the space, of finding the attention. We just slot in kind of the appropriate or the most salient sort of thing that needs our attention and our discernment.
Yep, time is important, and we all have a finite amount of time. Andy, are there tools that work particularly well for families to manage their money?
I'm a big fan of this conversation. Absolutely. Yeah. I think the world of FinTech has gotten so much better, so much more improved. Like Grant, I definitely took advantage of those free tools like Mint for a really long time, Personal Capital, now Empower. I'm a big fan now of Monarch Money, especially for couples. It helps couples to collaborate, also providing a lot of the financial overview like net worth and things like that as well. So my wife and I transitioned from Mint after shedding a few tears that free tool went away over to Monarch about 6 months ago, and we love it. It's great. You know, YNAB is another fantastic tool people just rave about. It also has a good collaboration for couples with YNAB together, one of their key features as well. So there are so many great tools out there, and I would applaud tools like Mint and Empower for paving the way for these ones to make their debut, because a lot of these are just really helping people automate this process and just make it so much easier.
And how frequently do you recommend the families review their spending habits?
Well, I'm gonna mirror what Grant said. I think in the beginning, while you have the fire, while you have the excitement, take advantage of the convenience of it being on your phone. Maybe while you're drinking your coffee in the morning, you know, you go through it. One of Kristen Elanius, an AFC, also calls it your budget smoothie, kind of like drinking your budget smoothie in the morning, where it's like you just got to down it. You know, you get it over with, take a look at all those expenses, make sure they're in the right spot. You know, like that green smoothie. But over time, as you get a little more used to the processes, you can maybe automate some things in there so you don't have to look at it as much. Right now, my wife and I have been on this journey together for 15 years. We look at it once a week on Saturdays. We have our coffee together. We go over our budget. We make sure we're in alignment with our values. This is also an opportunity for us to look over the family calendar, as Amanda referred to, just making sure, hey, here are the things that are coming up in our lives. Are we both on the same page as this? And, you know, do we need to reassess those goals? Do we need to reassess those values? As Grant mentioned earlier, things change. The things we care about change. So are we checking in on a frequent enough basis to make sure that we're understanding what's going on in each other's lives, and how can we support each other to move in that direction?
Good advice. Let's bring it home and go to the last segment.
Explore transformative journeys from impulsive buying to mindful spending, where individuals share their real-life experiences. These stories highlight a shift towards intentional living, emphasizing the profound impact of aligning purchases with personal values and long-term goals. Individuals describe their awakening to unsustainable spending habits, sparked by financial challenges or a search for deeper satisfaction. They recount adopting new practices like budgeting apps and spending diaries to navigate their financial transformation thoughtfully. The narratives address overcoming challenges, resisting impulse buys, modifying deep-seated habits, and confronting social pressures. Hear their strategies and the pivotal moments that led to sustainable change in their spending behavior. These personal accounts culminate in transformative outcomes, not only improved financial health, but also increased personal joy and value alignment. The stories serve as powerful testaments to the benefits of mindful spending, offering practical advice and inspiration for those seeking a similar path to financial and personal well-being.
Kate, what advice do you have for people dealing with frequent temptations for unplanned spending? Could be from moves, changes, or just lifestyle pressures.
For me personally, having a very tangible and realistic goal is a huge motivator. If I know that I'm trying to, when we very first got married, our goal was to be out of debt before we had our first child. And it was so easy to be motivated because it was tangible, it was achievable. And we had a timeline that we wanted to make this happen. And so I think that's absolutely huge. I know when we look back at the periods of our life where we don't have those very specific goals are the periods of time where the spending sometimes does go a little off track because we're like, oh, we've got the money. We don't really have a plan for it, so we might as well just spend it.
Andy, I want to ask you, how has sharing your financial journey influenced others to adopt mindful spending practices?
I think especially with Kate's example there, I think unless you do have a goal, unless you have somebody that inspires you or gives you an example of something, it's a lot harder to put it into action. So I applaud the researchers and the creators out there that put great information about how to do this stuff, but sometimes it just requires somebody's story who's sharing and opening up about the specific transparent details of how they did it for something to click in your brain to say, oh, wow, I can do that. I can do that. I'm like this person. This person looks like me, or they sound like me, or they're my age, or they're the same gender, or whatever. Something where you can see yourself in that person. That's why representation matters a lot, I believe, when we talk about these types of stories, for people to see how it's done. And then once you see yourself in that person's shoes, having those steps to get from maybe a negative net worth to a positive net worth, and how you did that, or eliminating the debt, or building that emergency fund, or investing your first $10,000. And then, wow, okay, now that I see those small steps that I could take, now I see how that just adds up over time with these consistent practices. So I think seeing an example of somebody doing it is really, really important.
You've interviewed a lot of people. Do you have a favorite success story?
Oh man, yeah. Oh, that's a tough one. I love seeing the couples that have done this together successfully, because it's one thing for an individual to say, hey, I'm inspired, I'm going to do it. But it's a whole other thing to say, I'm inspired, I'm going to do it, and then have your spouse jump on board with you in the same inspiring passion, the same enthusiasm. So the ones that have done that together successfully, that have remained married, those are the ones that pop into my brain. I think of like Erica Young and Chris Young. I think they've been married for 25 years. They work together, both very different, maybe the spender and the saver kind of mentality, but they figured out and found ways to complement each other and also learn from each other. Take that sort of empathy and understanding of like, what can this person, what can I learn from this person that I'm married with for over 25 years? And they went from a zero position all the way to millionaire status. And it's just so exciting to watch how they did that and navigating those uncharted waters at times.
Well, when you have a couple, sometimes you don't have the same definition of how you see money, and you have different personalities and about spending. So yes, when you can win together, not easier, but that much more rewarding when you get there.
Absolutely.
Amanda, can you share a success story from your practice where a client made a transformative financial change?
One of the things that I see a lot in my practice are people who are confronting certain patterns in their lives with money. And a big one, of course, is avoidance. Money pushes a lot of emotional buttons. So people who have just a lot of fear that comes up when they sit down and try to engage with money. And I'm thinking of a person who really rebellious against any kind of constraint, which I identify with. Had and so when her money was feeling like it was a picture of failure, that was what came up for her whenever she was looking at her money. She felt like, I'm such a failure. I've created this mess for myself. When she was able to kind of feel some of the emotions that were around that situation, feel some grief in some ways, find forgiveness for herself, and be able to like Kate was saying, that this is we're not budgeting for zero, right? We take up space in this world, we consume, and sometimes that we have a lot of pain attached to those things. So I'm thinking of this particular person who used looking at money as a journey to process a lot of that unconscious emotional material, and was able to, and going through kind of the shadowy part of that experience, come to a place of really reclaiming her needs, of saying, I matter. What matters to me is important, and I deserve to give my full attention, my full capacity toward bringing this vision of wholeness and self-worth into a reflection in how I'm thinking about and using money in my life. And that to me is just like, that's the thing that I celebrate. That's the reason that I do this work, is not because I get so excited about how many zeros people have in their bank accounts, but because money is often really integral in our growth journey as people on this planet. And so I love to see when that transformation happens.
Grant, your journey, entrepreneurship has been like central to your financial independence journey. So it's not just about savings. You've gone through many different ways to make money. You sold your blog, Millennial Money, and then I think you bought it back. You have many different businesses and income streams. As you go through that process, do you still look at your net worth on your phone when you're having coffee in the morning, or does that change a lot?
Yeah, I still do it, and it still motivates me. Yeah, the numbers are a little bit bigger, and there's a little more moving pieces. But yeah, I still have the practice, and it still brings me joy. And like anyone, even though I have a lot more money now, I'm still very mindful about what I spend on and where I spend it. I certainly spend a lot more money than I used to, but I'm still intentional about it. I own 3 homes. I travel all over the world. I have much more complexity in my life. Full-time nanny team, 9 full-time team members behind me. So the level of complexity is a lot more intense now. But yeah, still do it, still have the practice, and still really enjoying the journey.
Do the priorities change a lot? Like, are you no longer trying to save like the nickels? Does that change?
Oh yeah, no, it's all about maximizing sort of joy per dollar, and happiness per dollar. So I mean, just this morning I wrote a $75,000 angel investment check to this new startup that I'm really into, and that's something that was 1.5 times my first year salary, and so I'm able to do things like that. I'm big into. I'm much more comfortable investing large sums of money, I would say, than spending large sums of money. You're not going to see me out there buying a $75,000 car. I'm going to shop for 3 months to buy a car and go find the best deal, that I can, for my family. But had no qualms about investing 75 grand in this startup company that I met a couple of weeks ago that I really believe in.
Well, as a true entrepreneur, you're looking for a return.
Yeah, and just to invest in other people. So I'm at that place. So now I've invested in about 40 different businesses. I own 6 different companies. I've built, this is what my next book, Inner Entrepreneur, is focused on. is it talks about sort of my journey of starting one side business all the way up through starting a holding company and investing in other companies. And it's a lot more fun, I find, just like, we're all dedicated to helping other people with their money. It's a lot more fun in business to invest in other people doing cool things than it is just doing cool things yourself. And so I'm getting a lot more joy doing that and just helping other people who are early on in the journey, just being like, oh, here's all the things you got to look out for. Here's some, seed capital, and I'm here to support you along the way. So it's really magnifies the joy I find.
It's really cool to see that evolution. Well, thank you to all of our panelists for joining today and shedding some light on money and spending. I think some of the takeaways are that, time is so important. Just spending time focused, thinking about your money, thinking about your values, thinking about what impact you want to have with your money is important. Not to have fear, to be kind to yourself and give yourself or allow yourself to make mistakes, because inevitably along the way, you're going to make them. That's how we learn. I encourage everybody to follow Grant Sabatier. He's at grantsabatier.com. Amanda Clayman, she's at amandaclayman.com. Andy Hill is at marriagekidsandmoney.com. Although I told you, to me, it seems like he's everywhere. And Kate Horrell, you can find her at katehorrell.com. I thank everybody for joining us today for this kind of afternoon session of Inspired Money. Appreciate the panelists all sharing their insights and their expertise, their stories. Please join us next week. Inspired Money will be back on Wednesday, April 24th. Our topic will be financial lessons from history, insights from economic crises. So I think there are going to be a lot of learnings there. Until next time, do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens. Thanks, everyone.